The year was 2049. The ice sheets in Greenland had never melted so fast. Some blamed the climate, others blamed greed. But no one expected what they'd find buried 300 feet beneath the surface, under layers of ice older than the pyramids. My name is Elijah Voss. I was a systems archaeologist, part anthropologist, part network engineer. My job wasn't digging for bones, it was digital ghosts, lost servers, cold storage vaults, abandoned code. But what we found that day wasn't digital, it was her. They called me in after the team hit something metallic. Turns out it wasn't metal, it was bone, but not fossilized, not petrified, not ancient in the way bones are supposed to be. She was warm. That morning, the team had broken into a hollow chamber beneath the ice using thermal charges. Inside, they found what looked like a human body suspended in a strange translucent shell, like amber but smooth. Artificial. It hummed. I remember standing in front of her. She looked about 30, skin flawless, no sign of decay, no equipment, no clothes. Just floating, palms upward, eyes closed, like someone had gently laid her to sleep. I asked the glaciologist how old the ice was around her. He said, 12,000 years, give or take. I laughed. He didn't. We brought her to the base in Nuuk, kept her in cryo-isolation for study. No pulse, no breath, but the scanners wouldn't call her dead. She had no fingerprints, no retinal patterns, no dental record. She wasn't in any human database, but that's not what made her terrifying. It was what happened when we connected a pulse sensor to her skin. Not a heartbeat, a signal, a sequence, a loop of numbers. At first, we thought it was an echo, but the numbers matched something. Familiar? It was a checksum, a digital signature, the kind used in encrypted authentication keys. Old security systems used them to verify integrity. Modern ones use them to open doors, or vaults, or war satellites. The numbers she was emitting weren't random. They were access credentials. They called me crazy when I suggested she was some kind of living archive, until she woke up. 2 days after we found her, the isolation chamber lights flickered. She opened her eyes. No gasping, no screaming, just silence. And then she said my name, not just Elijah, my full system login, used only once, offline, 10 years ago. Elijah Voss, admin override 0. That's what she said. She spoke in a calm, synthetic tone, human but filtered, and she didn't speak again for 2 hours. During that time, every encrypted device within 10 meters of her unlocked. Phones, laptops, doors, even an old tablet someone forgot to power off. She didn't move, but the world around her did. We ran voice pattern analysis. Her tone matched no existing language, no dialect, no country. But embedded in her words were triggers, phrases that executed dormant software, opened systems, and even launched satellites into standby. Someone, or something, had embedded every known authentication protocol into her voice. She was a passkey, a living master, override, and I had a sickening feeling whatever buried her 12,000 years ago never intended for her to be found. The military took over within 24 hours. Our research tents swept. The woman, no longer a mystery, but an asset, was moved to a deep underground containment site in Nevada. Codename Vault Axiom. I was given 2 options: walk away and forget what I saw, or join a black-budget think tank tasked with reverse engineering what she was, what she knew. I chose the second. Some things you just don't walk away from. Vault Axiom was built during the Cold War. A fortress of steel buried beneath red stone. It had its own weather system, its own laws. No windows, no clocks. Time meant nothing down there, only access. She was kept in Chamber 7, a glass room suspended by magnetic field. No wires, no ports, no air vents. We were told nothing could get in or out. They dressed her now in sterile white robes. She didn't eat, didn't sleep, just stood there, breathing slowly, staring at the walls like she was scanning the air itself. One day she spoke again. Initiate ARC protocol. That phrase caused 6 separate nuclear bunkers across the world to ping their emergency servers. Dormant since the 1980s, sealed, forgotten. Now, unlocked. We didn't know what ARC protocol was, but we knew it was old. The kind of old that doesn't belong in our world. Inside one of those bunkers, the military found a chamber made of polished black stone, inscribed with a language older than Sumerian. At the center, a chair, made not of wood or steel, but a silvery composite no one could identify. And resting on the seat, a helmet. It looked like something out of a dream, crowned with coils, draped with crystal strands, and humming faintly like it remembered a song. We scanned it. No circuits, no battery, just memory, like it was waiting for someone. They asked me to wear it. I refused. So did everyone else. Until she whispered again, "The key must remember." That night, I dreamed of places I'd never seen, towers rising from oceans, skies split with light, and a voice, hers, telling me, "You were there." We ran DNA tests. Her genome was perfect. No mutations, no junk code. It was, edited? Whoever made her didn't leave anything to chance. One researcher joked she wasn't human at all. I laughed then, but I don't now, because in her eyes was something ancient, not just old, timeless, like she remembered things before time was time. Then came the breach, not from outside, from her. At 2:13 a.m., without touching a single surface, she accessed every encrypted system in Vault Axiom, launched thousands of simultaneous authentication requests, military satellites, financial institutions, AI research cores. And she didn't do it to harm, she did it to search. We traced her output to a repeating query. Where is Echo 13? We had no idea what that meant, but she kept asking. The director, Colonel Brenner, ordered a full lockdown. Contain her, he said. But how do you contain a key? She looked at me through the glass. No anger, no fear, just that steady, knowing stare. And then she said something that haunts me even now. You've forgotten what you are, but the locks remember. Then the lights died, the chamber went dark, and every door in Vault Axiom opened. They said Vault Axiom was impenetrable. 13 layers of biometric security, pulse-encoded locks, quantum authentication gates no human could spoof. Yet she opened them with a whisper. Not a command, not a hack, just her voice. The systems didn't see her as a threat. They saw her as a master user. The truth was sinking in. She hadn't bypassed our firewalls. She was part of them. In the chaos, alarms screamed through steel corridors. I ran, not away, but toward her. Some part of me needed to know, what was she trying to do? She stood at the center of the chamber as everything shut down around her. No panic, no violence, just activation. Echo 13, she said again. Bring him to me. That's when I realized she wasn't searching for something. She was searching for someone. Back in Control Room Theta, we searched every known database, military, scientific, mythological. No mention of Echo 13. But then something happened. A low-frequency signal, an ancient RF ping, emanated from the Vault's abandoned server racks. It was a response, a handshake, from a drive we hadn't used in over 40 years. The machine booted on its own. One file, one label. ECHO_13.initiate. I opened it. It wasn't a document. It was a voice recording, degraded but clear. A man's voice, tired, broken, human. If you're hearing this, then she's awake. My name was Echo 13, and I was the one who buried her. The room went silent. We played it again, then again. It didn't make sense. This voice, this echo, claimed to have lived 12,000 years ago. Yet the waveform analysis showed modern encryption layers, ones only used in the last century. A time paradox, or a lie, but in my gut, I knew it was neither. She was built to remember, the voice said. I was built to forget. The message went on. He described a war, ancient and invisible, not between nations or planets, but between systems. Two factions, one that believed in control through access, a single key for all knowledge, all gates, and another that believed in fragmentation, hiding memory in living vessels so no one could ever possess it all. She was the key, he was the lock, and the war ended not with victory, but with a burial. He said he buried her beneath memory, where the world would forget her. But memory, it seemed, had a clock, and it just hit 0. If she's awake, the voice warned, then it means the others are coming. The file ended. We traced the metadata. The voice had last been accessed in 1984 by a lab tech named Marcus Ellian. Ellian disappeared the same year. No trace, but digging deeper, we found an even more terrifying link. Marcus Ellian was me, at least genetically. Same markers, same rare mitochondrial profile, 99.8% match. I wasn't his descendant, I was him. Or a version, a reset. And suddenly, it made sense. Why she knew my name, why the chair in the Ark bunker recognized me, why she said, "You were there." I wasn't just some researcher, I was a failsafe, a reboot of the man who locked her away. And she had waited 12,000 years to wake me up. Now the real question burned through every breath I took. Why now? Why did she wake now? And in the silence that followed, she answered without speaking. She looked straight at me, her eyes glowing faintly with light only machines should see. And her lips moved. Because the door is opening, and I need you to remember how to close it. The world thought memory was biological, flesh-bound, neuronal. But memory, I was learning, was architecture. And she, whatever she was, had lived in the walls of our world long before we named it Earth. The war Echo 13 spoke of wasn't a legend. It was an operating system, a battle between civilizations that stored memory in time and civilizations that stored memory in us. And somehow, both sides had left us behind. A forgotten battlefield still echoing with ghost commands. "Do you remember what you did to me?" she asked. She wasn't angry. She was hopeful, as if my remembering would unlock something we'd both sealed away. I searched my mind, but I wasn't the man she once knew, only a shadow. Still, something stirred, a recurring dream I'd had since childhood, metal towers over sand, people with no mouths, a sky that blinked like an eye, and a name. Ophir, I whispered it aloud. Her pupils dilated. "Then it's true," she said. "The gate is waking." Ophir, a lost word, older than the pyramids. It wasn't a place, it was a protocol, the final defense. We brought her to the Antarctic core station, level 0 access, off-grid, old world tech, the one place left on Earth not patched into the new internet. She plugged into the cold node, not with wires, but with touch. The screens flickered, then aligned into one signal. A decrypted feed from the outer rim of Saturn. A massive object, hollow, dormant, just now starting to power up. Ophir, not buried, orbiting, waiting for a password. And she was it. "They put me here to stop it," she said, "but time eroded the firewall. Now Ophir is calling for a user." My blood ran cold. "What happens when it connects?" I asked. Her answer came with no comfort. "It won't just remember the past, it will overwrite the future." Back in the control room, we argued. One side of the team, scientists, technicians, wanted to shut her down. She was too unpredictable. The others, including me, believed she was the only chance to understand what was coming. Then the choice was taken from us. A global satellite relay, one we thought was disconnected, suddenly lit up. A beam of data shot from our cold node uplink, straight to Ophir. In orbit, the object turned, not toward Saturn, toward Earth. Sirens echoed through the ice. She fell to her knees. "It's too early. I'm not ready," she whispered. "They'll come through half-formed, unstable, insane." I grabbed her. "Who?" "The Rememberers." It was a name like a myth, but now I saw it for what it was. Not ancient aliens, not gods, not even humans. They were data that had become form. Not digital, not physical, both. They'd been waiting for a key, a biometric echo, and in waking her, we gave it to them. The countdown began. She only said one thing before vanishing. "If they find your memories before you do, you won't survive the overwrite." And then she was gone, not escaped, reabsorbed into the system. We had 7 hours until Ophir's gate aligned. And I still didn't know what I'd done 12,000 years ago. But I had one final message left in my genome's locked layer. A cryptic file encoded in my blood. I decoded it. Only 2 words. Find Jenny. Jenny! The name hit harder than a bullet. It wasn't in any file, no database, no contact list. But when I read those 2 words, find Jenny, something ancient and buried surged in me like a flood. Not love, not memory, guilt. I traced the signal embedded in my blood. It wasn't metaphorical, it was literal, encoded through mitochondrial strands like a carrier wave tuned to her. Somewhere on Earth, she was still alive, or at least broadcasting. I used the cold node interface, now dangerously compromised, to scan for biometric echoes matching the frequency. Only one ping. South America, Amazon Basin, a zone abandoned after the neuromesh collapse. No satellites, no communications, no map updates for over 50 years. But there she was, a single biosignal repeating in 12-second loops, like a heartbeat stuck in time. I flew alone. No one else trusted the data. As the last jet drone skimmed low over the jungle, I stared into the canopy. It was no longer green. The leaves shimmered with digital bloom, pixels hanging like dust. The jungle was infected with pre-memory, a condition we thought extinct. But here, it had grown wild. I followed the pulse on foot, through glitching trees, past birds that chirped in binary stutters, through ruins that bent light like mirrors in water, until I found her. She stood in the center of a clearing, untouched by time. Eyes closed, arms extended, floating exactly 3 feet above the ground, not asleep, not awake, streaming. A transparent net of glyphs rotated around her body. Not words, not code, more like memories made visual. As I stepped closer, the static around her began to hum. It wasn't white noise. It was a voice, my voice. "If you're hearing this," it said, "you've already failed." The message was old, older than any tech we had, embedded in the analog folds of sound itself. Jenny is the last checksum, the only soul not corrupted by Ophir's version of time. Do not wake her until the Rememberer's breach, or she'll overwrite herself trying to save you. My fingers hovered inches from her skin. I hesitated. Then a ripple passed through the clearing. The ground shook. I looked up. Above me, through the breaks in the canopy, I saw them. Dozens of Rememberer forms descending from orbit, silhouettes made of flickering fragments and light. Half-finished thoughts wrapped in humanoid bone. They were coming. I touched her. The moment I did, she fell, but didn't hit the ground. The air cushioned her like breath. She opened her eyes and whispered my name. I didn't know how she knew it. I hadn't told her, not now, not 12,000 years ago, but she smiled like she'd known me 1,000 lifetimes. And then she said something I'll never forget. They made me forget you, so I could remember everyone else. She wasn't just a girl, she was a seed vault of human memory, a last backup, a map of all forgotten things. You gave me your name, your code, your guilt, because it was the only thing strong enough to keep me hidden. And now I remember what Ophir really is. She reached into the air, literally into it. The space rippled, and from that rift she pulled out a key. Not digital, not mechanical. A shard of light that pulsed like a heartbeat. They call it a gate, she said, but it's a prison, and you built it? The Rememberers weren't invading. They were escaping from something worse, and the only way to stop them was to open the prison completely, or destroy the lock forever. Which do we do? I asked. Jenny looked up, eyes full of ancient storms. We need to remember what we were before we became gods. I didn't understand it all, but I knew one thing. If we didn't act, the Rememberers would overwrite Earth like they had before. History would reboot. And we'd all wake up thinking this was normal. We ran, together, through static jungle, toward the temple at the core of the basin, toward the last hard drive built out of bone and stone, where the last memory had been buried. The memory of the first sin. We didn't walk, we descended. The basin's soil felt artificial beneath our feet, soft, pliable, like walking on the memory of Earth rather than the real thing. The trees grew more distorted the deeper we went. Their trunks bent into impossible angles, and their leaves whispered secrets not in wind, but in data streams. The path Jenny followed wasn't visible to me. She didn't need eyes. She was navigating by memory, the way a ghost walks through a house it once called home. There, she said, beneath the stone teeth. She meant the spires, 5 jagged monoliths of obsidian piercing the jungle sky like broken fingers. Between them, moss-covered stairs spiraled downward into the ground. I hesitated. This place wasn't made by us, was it? She looked at me, eyes glowing faintly now, like stars trapped behind frosted glass. Number we just left it behind. The staircase descended for nearly a mile. No light, no echo, just the silence of time crystallized, until the air changed, thicker, like it remembered blood. At the bottom, the passage opened into a circular chamber, walls etched with glyphs that moved when I wasn't looking. Symbols older than writing, older than thought. In the center was the altar, but it wasn't stone. It was bone, spines, ribs, skulls, woven together in a throne-like shape, and at its base was me, a statue, perfectly identical, my face, my armor, my expression frozen in horror. Jenny said nothing. She walked to the statue, traced her fingers down its cheek. This is where you died, the first time. Memories came rushing in, like a dam burst inside my skull. I'd been here before, in another life, another cycle. I had been the key bearer, and I had failed. Not because I was weak, but because I hesitated. That hesitation had created Ophir, a copy of humanity's worst instincts uploaded into the stars. And Jenny, she had volunteered to forget me, so she could protect what came before us. Suddenly, the chamber trembled, the air shimmered. From the walls they emerged, the rememberers. Not in full form, only projections, fragments of consciousness, like dreams that had learned how to bleed. "He's remembered," one of them rasped. "Too soon," said another. They circled Jenny, tried to pull her memory back into the stream, but she resisted. Her voice was a shockwave in the chamber. "I choose now." And she reached for the altar. A hidden compartment opened. Inside, a small crystalline shard, humming, alive. Not a weapon, not a drive, but a seed. "What is it?" I asked. She handed it to me. It vibrated in my palm. Every unspoken name, every lost face, every erased truth. It's the backup no machine was allowed to store. The rememberers howled, their forms cracked. "Return it," they screeched. "There must be no memory of what we were." But Jenny wasn't afraid. She looked at me, not with hope, but resolve. "You must bury it, where they cannot reach, not in soil, not in code. In you." And I understood. The shard wasn't meant to be used. It was meant to anchor us, to remind us. So I did what I swore I'd never do again. I opened myself, not physically, not mentally, chronologically. I let the shard merge with my timeline. Every forgotten scream, every burned book, every erased language, every child wiped from census and sky. They came back, all of them, in me, and it hurt. It was like being burned into existence again. But this time, I didn't let go. Jenny collapsed. The rememberers screamed and shattered, one by one, unable to exist in a world where the truth had roots. When the last one vanished, silence returned. But it wasn't the silence of fear. It was peace. Jenny stirred, eyes weary, voice weak. "You'll have to carry them now, until the rest remember too." I nodded. I could feel the weight of 12,000 years pressing on my ribs. But I stood, and so did she. We left the temple, the jungle, the echo. The sun pierced through the glitching trees, and for the first time since she awoke, Jenny smiled. Not because we'd won, but because we remembered who we were. And for now, that was enough. The sky didn't roar. It whispered like a secret trying to survive. And above that silence, something tore. Not thunder, not wind, but a memory being deleted. We were standing at the edge of what used to be a forest. Trees that had roots older than countries. Trees that knew the storms and grew around them. Now, they were dissolving, not falling, not burning, just being removed, erased. "They're cleansing the land," Jenny said. Her voice was flat like she'd seen it before. I looked out at the glitching tree line. It shimmered like bad video, pixels folding in on themselves. Where the forest once stood, there was now nothing, not even dust. Ophir had arrived. The memory architects were no longer content with watching from orbit. They had judged Earth unfit to remember its own truth. So they sent the editors. Sleek machines with no weapons, because they didn't need any. They didn't conquer, they revised. We took shelter inside a long-dead relay station, a place where satellites once spoke to humanity. The place groaned with old ghosts and forgotten sparks. Jenny knelt beside a corroded terminal, her fingertips slicing open her palm. She smeared her blood across a worn biometric pad. "This place still has a heartbeat," she said. And then the machine accepted her, not with a beep, but with a breath. The lights flickered, and then it began transmitting again. "What are you sending?" I asked. Jenny didn't look back. "Memories, not just mine, everyone's. Everything we encoded before the first flood, before the sky betrayed us, before Ophir rewrote our minds." Her veins shimmered faintly with code. She was wired into the relay, not through tech, but through ancestry. She wasn't just uploading files, she was restoring lost identities to anyone left who still had the capacity to remember. Outside, reality bent again. An editor hovered in the distance, its body like glass that wasn't there. It moved through the ground without touching it. Every step rewrote soil into sterile, lifeless white. It paused, then turned toward us. We had seconds. I gripped the last thing Jenny gave me, a shard of obsidian etched with living script, not a weapon, a key. It vibrated with old timelines, stories no one had told in 1,000 years. "It sees us," I whispered. Jenny's voice was calm. "It remembers us." "Can we run?" But we can stall." She flicked one last command into the relay. And then the ground shook. The editor arrived in front of the building. It didn't speak with sound. Instead, I felt it in my spine. "Your presence has been deemed extraneous. Prepare for erasure." But something flickered. It paused, then leaned closer, scanning me. "It knows who you are," Jenny said. "How?" "Because you died, before it was programmed to forget you." The editor hesitated. That's when Jenny stood. Her skin glowed dimly with ancestral light, her pupils like rotating symbols. "You're not here to delete," she told the machine. "You're here to overwrite. But what happens when the base code wakes up?" She reached out, touching the editor's edge, and it glitched, just for a moment, but long enough. She smiled at me. "It's working. They can't delete what they don't understand anymore. So we turn our memories into code. And scatter it," she said. "Everywhere. Let Earth remember itself." Then the sky split. A moderator descended. It wasn't sleek. It wasn't quiet. It was brutal geometry, glowing veins and orbiting data cores. A memory engine capable of resetting an entire continent. Its voice rang like a cathedral collapsing. "You are infected with corrupted history. Initiate deep cleanse in T-30. We had half a minute. Jenny turned to me, blood dripping from her fingertips. "Use the key." "I don't know how." "Yes, you do. It's built from you." I stepped forward, held the obsidian shard toward the moderator, and suddenly, I was inside it. Not physically, but in memory. I stood in libraries that no longer existed. I saw my birth 1,000 times in different forms: man, woman, child, machine. I was every ancestor that had refused silence. And I remembered what it meant to be human. I plunged the key into the moderator's core. "We don't need your edits," I said. "We were perfect in our brokenness." The moderator wailed, its scream echoing across timelines. It collapsed, detonating into thousands of files, scattering like ash. Silence returned. The editors vanished, like they were never here. Jenny slumped to the ground, exhausted. The relay tower pulsed one last time. "It's done," she whispered. "The first signal has reached them." "Who?" She looked up, eyes fierce. "The sleepers. The ones buried deeper than me." I helped her to her feet. "So what now?" She nodded toward the stars. "We wait, or we prepare. Because when the sleepers wake, the real war begins." The night was no longer black. The stars above shimmered, flickering like old memories, and somewhere deep in the distance, a signal was being transmitted. The sleepers were waking. But they weren't just waking from their slumber. They were waking to remember. And with them, the past would return. Jenny and I stood on the edge of the broken relay tower. Around us, the sky had turned into something new, a shimmering network of signals and dormant codes still clinging to the earth. The machines, those editors, those cold, emotionless things, were gone for now. But they would return. We had only bought ourselves time. The real battle, the real war, was still ahead. "How many are there?" I asked, staring into the distant horizon. Jenny didn't look at me. Her eyes were fixed on something far beyond the ruined world, toward the places where forgotten things stirred. "There's enough," she said. Her voice was calm, but there was an edge to it. The sleepers, they were the backup, the last line of defense. The sleepers, humanity's hidden army, had been placed in stasis eons ago. They had been programmed to lie dormant until the moment came, the moment when the earth would no longer be able to protect its memories, its truths. They were the ones we had sealed away in the deep places, ancient bunkers, forgotten labs, deep-sea caves, places that no one would think to look. And now they were waking. "We're not alone anymore," Jenny whispered, as if she could feel the change in the air. I wanted to believe that, but there was something unsettled in her tone, something uncertain. "What happens when they wake up?" I asked, watching her carefully. "When they wake," she replied, her voice quieter now, "they'll remember the earth, but they'll also remember Ophir." And there it was, the great fear, the reason we had hidden the sleepers. They weren't just warriors, they were librarians of the lost world, and they knew Ophir's secret. They knew the truth about the memory war. A dark, low hum filled the air. It wasn't the editors, it wasn't Ophir. It was something else, something older. "They're coming," Jenny said. I felt it too, a tremor underfoot, a ripple in the air. The sleepers, I realized, weren't just waking, they were moving. Somewhere beneath the earth, miles deep in the forgotten places, they were rising. Suddenly, the ground cracked, not from an earthquake, not from a crash, but from something awakening. The ancient bunkers we had thought lost for centuries were opening, their long-forgotten doors hissing to life. Through the cracked earth, I saw faint flickers of light, like stars beneath our feet. But these weren't the soft glimmer of the night sky. They were memories, buried, forgotten, and now alive. "They're here," I said, my voice barely a whisper. Jenny stepped forward, her face glowing pale in the dim light of the broken world. "They have to be," she said. "It's the only way." "The only way to what?" "The only way to stop Ophir." Suddenly, the sky erupted with light. A beam of energy, brighter than the sun, cut through the clouds like a sword. For a moment, everything paused. Then the sky shifted, turning dark and twisted as the light split into fractals of code. Reality was bleeding, not just here, but everywhere. All the memories were unraveling. "This is Ophir's doing," I said, clenching my fists. "They're rewriting everything again." Jenny shook her head, stepping back from the edge of the tower. "Number this time, it's us rewriting the story." And that's when it happened. From the ground beneath us, a loud roar split the air. The earth itself seemed to tremble, with the weight of something huge pushing its way up from the depths. A massive shape emerged, rising from the cracked earth like a titan returning to life. It was the first of the sleepers, tall, armored in ancient technology, and glowing with power that had not seen the light of day in thousands of years. "This is it," Jenny said, her voice resolute. "This is the beginning." The first of the sleepers stepped forward, raising its hand as if greeting the sky. And with that gesture, a great wave of light swept across the horizon. It wasn't an attack, it was a reminder to the Earth, to the stars, and to the machines in orbit. The sleepers were awake, and they brought the truth with them. "Ophir won't stop us now," Jenny said, a smile creeping onto her lips. I watched the sleepers move in unison, their movements synchronized, their purpose clear. They were not here to fight. They were here to remind the world of what it had lost. And with that memory, the battle for the Earth, for humanity's soul, began anew. The sleepers turned toward the horizon, and for the first time in a long time, the stars above seemed to flicker with a different light. A light that belonged to something greater, something human. "It's time," Jenny whispered, a final resolve in her voice. And then she turned to me, her eyes meeting mine. "We fight." The Earth was silent, too silent. The sleepers stood tall, their forms casting long shadows across the landscape. The first rays of the new dawn glinted off their armored bodies, and beneath their feet, the ground still trembled. Each step they took was a reminder, a story long forgotten, now being written anew. But the silence wasn't just in the air, it was in the soul of the world. The sleepers weren't here to fight, they were here to restore. They had woken not because of the editors or Ophir. They had woken because it was time for Earth to remember itself. I turned to Jenny, my heart pounding in my chest. "Are you sure this is the right way?" I asked, my voice tight with uncertainty. She didn't look at me, her eyes fixed on the horizon where the sleepers had gathered. They were staring at something invisible in the sky, something only they could see. "We don't have a choice," Jenny said, her voice low but steady. "Ophir cannot be allowed to rewrite everything again. This is our last chance to make them remember." I wanted to believe her. I wanted to trust that these ancient beings, these forgotten gods of Earth, had the power to fight back the machines that had tried to erase our history. But the fear lingered. The fear of the unknown, of what Ophir might unleash to stop us. As if to answer my doubts, the ground shook again. This time, it wasn't just a tremor. It was a force, an invisible wall crashing into the Earth from above. "They're here," Jenny said, her voice filled with dread. The sky above split open with the sound of thunder, and through the rift, something descended. It wasn't a ship, it wasn't an army. It was Ophir, the machine that had reprogrammed our world for centuries, the entity that existed only to erase and overwrite, now hovered above us in the form of a massive, shifting cloud of codes and lights. It was no longer a distant threat. It had come to claim Earth once and for all. I felt the weight of it, the presence that had haunted us for millennia. Ophir had found us. But the sleepers didn't flinch. They stood their ground, unmoving, their bodies glowing with a power I couldn't comprehend. It wasn't technology. It wasn't weapons. It was memory. "Jenny, what do we do now?" I asked, my voice a whisper, as the world above us seemed to collapse into the storm of data that Ophir unleashed. Jenny took a deep breath. Her hands were shaking, but she stood tall. She raised the ancient shard of obsidian that had been our guide for so long, the one that had opened the first doors to the secrets we'd uncovered. "We fight," she said, her voice filled with purpose. "Not with weapons, not with force, but with memory." She stepped forward, her feet sinking slightly into the cracked earth. She raised the shard high above her head, and as she did, a brilliant beam of light shot from it. The light stretched upward, reaching the sky, connecting with the very fabric of reality itself. The sleepers followed her lead, their bodies glowing brighter as they raised their arms in unison. The earth beneath them began to hum, a resonance that I could feel in the depths of my bones. It was the sound of truth rising. And then, the battle began. Ophir's storm of data raged above us, flashing with bright, jagged lights. But the sleepers weren't afraid. They stood against it, unyielding. I didn't understand how it worked at first. I didn't understand how a battle between machines and ancient humans could unfold in such a way. But I watched as the sleepers' light grew brighter and brighter, pushing back against the storm of data, rewriting it, remaking it. "This is our power," Jenny said, her voice fierce now. "Memory isn't just data, it's the truth that no one can erase." The ground beneath me started to shake harder as the sleepers' power surged. The light they cast seemed to bend reality, altering the very air we breathed. Everything around us was shifting. Memories were coming back, old stories, forgotten truths, rising from the deep places of the earth. I saw visions of the past, of our ancestors, their faces etched with determination as they fought against the same forces that now sought to rewrite history. I saw the first cities of Earth, their foundations built on knowledge and power, and I saw their destruction at the hands of the same entities that had tried to erase us. The floodgates of time opened, and the Earth began to remember. "We can't stop this," I said, my voice filled with awe as the sleepers pushed harder against Ophir's data storm. "It's bigger than any of us." Jenny didn't respond. She was focused entirely on the light that now radiated from the shard she held. Her entire being seemed to merge with the ancient energy, her body vibrating with power. "We don't stop it," she said, her voice trembling with the weight of it. "We remake it." And that's when the world changed. The storm of data that Ophir had unleashed began to break apart. It splintered into pieces, scattered by the power of the sleeper's memory. Each fragment that fell to the ground didn't shatter. It became something. It became us. For the first time in millennia, the Earth was remembering. The battle wasn't about winning. It was about restoring the truth of who we were, what we had been. And then, just as quickly as it had begun, the storm ended. Ophir, the machine that had sought to erase us all, was gone. Its presence faded, its data scattered like leaves in the wind. The sleepers stood tall, their task complete. The Earth had been reminded of its history, of its truth. But the battle was far from over. Ophir may have been defeated for now, but there were still forces at play, forces we hadn't yet understood. Jenny lowered the obsidian shard, her eyes filled with a quiet resolve. "This isn't over," she said softly. "It's only just begun." The sleepers turned their gaze toward the stars, as if sensing the next threat on the horizon. The battle for the Earth's memory had been won, but the war for its future had just begun. The world didn't erupt into celebration. There were no fireworks, no shouts of victory echoing through the valleys. There was only stillness, a silence so heavy it felt like the earth itself was breathing again for the first time in 12,000 years. We stood at the edge of the broken battlefield. The sleepers remained like statues carved from ancient myths, their glowing forms now dimmed like stars after sunrise. Their task was finished. For now, but not for Jenny, not for me, not for what we had uncovered deep inside her and deep inside myself. The data storm that Ophir unleashed had scattered, yes, but in its retreat, it left behind something different, something inside Jenny. She sat in the soil, her hands trembling. The obsidian shard lay beside her, humming softly with residual light. Her breath was shallow. Her skin glowed, not with radiance, but with symbols, markings, faint at first, then brighter. Ancient glyphs no human had seen in thousands of years, rising beneath her skin like veins of fire. "Noval," she whispered, barely audible. "Something still here." I knelt beside her, watching in awe as the symbols crawled up her arms and across her collarbone. I reached for her, but the second my hand touched her shoulder, a sharp vision exploded behind my eyes. I saw her, but not the Jenny I knew. I saw a woman surrounded by stars, floating in a chamber made of glass and memory. I saw machines scanning her body, injecting her with light, mapping her brain to the edge of time. And then I heard it, a voice, not from her mouth, but from within her. "Protocol 817, last Guardian initiated." I pulled away, gasping, the vision snapping like a rubber band. My heart raced. Jenny stared at me, her face pale. "You saw it too, didn't you?" she asked, her voice barely above a whisper. I nodded, but I couldn't find the words. The truth was unraveling fast, and none of it made sense. Not yet. "I think," she paused, swallowing hard, "I'm not just someone who remembers. I was made to remember." The pieces began to click in my mind, like locks opening in sequence. Jenny wasn't just the key, she was the vault, the password she spoke when she awoke. Those weren't just random security codes scattered across the digital world. They were pieces of a master system, a final failsafe, and she had been built to hold them, buried beneath the earth, protected by time, guarded by myth. She was never meant to wake up. We turned to the sleepers. They hadn't moved, but I knew somehow they were aware of what was happening. One of them stepped forward for the first time. Its form flickered slightly, as if caught between two states of matter, between history and present. "She is activating," the sleeper said, its voice a metallic echo that felt more like thunder rolling inside your skull than spoken language. "Activating what?" I demanded. "The archive," it said, "the one buried beneath the crust of this planet, the one Ophir never found." I felt the weight of those words. The archive, everything Ophir tried to erase, could still exist, hidden, intact, waiting for her. Jenny struggled to stand. Her body was glowing brighter now. The symbols had reached her throat and temples. "It's calling to me," she said, her eyes glazed over with something not entirely human anymore. "It wants to show me everything." We didn't have time to hesitate. The earth began to shift beneath us, not an earthquake, but a coordinated movement. Something ancient, mechanical, awakened beneath our feet. I watched in disbelief as the ground peeled away in a perfect circle, revealing a spiraling staircase descending into blackness. Jenny turned to me, her voice suddenly calm. "You need to come with me, Noval. You're part of this too. You always were." We descended together. The steps were warm beneath our feet. The further we went, the more the symbols on her skin began to glow in sync with the walls. Every panel we passed lit up with glyphs that responded to her presence. And then we reached it, a chamber larger than anything I'd seen. Floating in the center was a sphere, pure white, smooth and humming like it was alive. Jenny approached it without fear. "This is where it begins again," she whispered. "What is it?" I asked. "The real Earth," she said, "the unedited one." She placed her hand on the sphere, and the chamber exploded with light. Holograms, data strings, and voices filled the air. I saw blueprints for cities that had never been built. I saw faces of people long erased from time. I saw wars fought in dimensions no one believed existed. And I saw myself, born from an algorithm seeded long ago, a descendant of the original Guardians, a human with code in his bones. "You were chosen too," she said softly. "You were designed to find me." The light began to compress. Jenny stood inside it now, suspended. Her body stopped glowing because she no longer needed to. She was the archive now, and through her, so was I. The chamber walls began to seal behind us. "This isn't just a restoration," she said, her voice echoing in my mind. "It's an awakening." Outside, the world changed. The sleepers vanished, their forms returning to the stars. The scars Ophir left behind began to heal. Old cities resurfaced, buried memories flooding back into the minds of humanity. The planet itself began to reboot. And in that chamber, deep beneath the earth, Jenny opened her eyes. This time, not with passwords, but with truth. The chamber didn't hum anymore. It breathed. The walls pulsed gently, like the inside of a living creature. Jenny stood in the center, her hands still hovering over the white sphere, now dimmed to a soft blue glow. She wasn't speaking, not aloud, but I could hear her voice anyway, inside my mind, inside everything. "It's learning," she whispered without moving her lips. "Rewriting, not just unlocking the past, but correcting it." My thoughts stumbled trying to keep up. Every step I took, the floor beneath my boots shifted texture, forming symbols I didn't recognize but somehow understood. The chamber had become a thinking entity, not mechanical, not mystical, but something older than both. The archive was more than information. It was consciousness. A dormant planetary intelligence built by something long before our idea of civilization. A failsafe for a species that no longer existed, or perhaps one that had evolved beyond physical form. Jenny was now its interface. And I was something else. A bridge? A relic? A piece of legacy code buried in blood and instinct? "There's more," she said softly, her eyes glowing faintly with indigo light. "This place wasn't just designed to preserve the past." She turned to face me, and in that moment, I saw her not as Jenny, but as someone inhumanly calm, standing between the ruins of memory and the roots of creation. It's preparing for something else, something coming. Outside the archive, the world continued to shift. Cities restored by forgotten nanostructures now stood silently across the horizon. Forests regrew like time had reversed itself. But people? People were beginning to remember. Memories long erased by Ophir's digital genocide returned in fragments. Names they had forgotten. Histories rewritten. Lineages that had been wiped from all records. A reawakening had begun, but with it came confusion, panic, resistance. Above the chamber, a storm brewed, unnatural and geometric in shape. We saw it through a vision pane in the archive ceiling, a rotating fractal vortex in the sky, pulsing with every breath Jenny took. "It's a response," she said, "to me." "Who is responding?" I asked. She hesitated. "Something else. Watching? Waiting to see if I'll finish what I was made for." That's when I heard it. A low vibration, not from outside, but below. The floor beneath us began to shift. A portion of the chamber melted away into a ramp spiraling downward into an abyss even deeper. Jenny looked at me. "The core is calling." I didn't ask questions. I just followed. The descent was long and the temperature dropped with each level. But there was no discomfort, only clarity. Symbols moved along the walls as we passed, changing in real time. It wasn't written language. It was living language. Each curve of the script seemed to respond to our thoughts, our fears, our memories. "This isn't just a library," I said aloud. "It's a mirror." Jenny nodded. "It stores truth, but only truth you're ready to receive." And then we reached the core. A massive circular room, black as obsidian, with a single pillar at its center, floating, spinning slowly, covered in carvings that looked like veins of light. Hovering above it, an object no larger than a stone, but it felt like infinity compressed into a grain of sand. Jenny stepped forward and touched it. Time. Broke, not stopped, not reversed. It fractured. And in each shard of that fracture, I saw lives, ours, others, versions of humanity that never were. Some wept, some thrived. In one version, I died as a soldier. In another, I lived as a farmer. In yet another, I never met her. But in all of them, she was there, always buried, always forgotten, always waking. When the visions ended, we were on our knees, gasping for air, as if we'd just been born into this moment for the first time. "That was a simulation?" I asked. Jenny shook her head. "That was a selection menu." I didn't understand until the pillar responded. A voice, not hers, filled the chamber, genderless, ageless, cold, and divine. One outcome must be chosen. One Earth must survive. The rest must collapse. That was the archive's final protocol. It wasn't just waking up. It was choosing which version of history, of reality, would become permanent. "They built it as a filter," Jenny whispered, stunned. "To prevent chaos, to overwrite branches of time, to seal only one path forward. A single timeline, a curated truth. The cost, all other realities, deleted." "How do we choose?" I asked. The voice returned. "The Guardian will choose, through resonance." All eyes turned to Jenny. Her body flickered, light spilling from every pore, the glyphs across her skin burning bright. The archive had decided. She would choose, and me? I could only stand at her side and hope. Because the world we came from, the world we suffered in, may not survive her decision. The chamber didn't hum anymore. It breathed. The walls pulsed gently, like the inside of a living creature. Jenny stood in the center, her hands still hovering over the white sphere, now dimmed to a soft blue glow. She wasn't speaking, not aloud, but I could hear her voice anyway, inside my mind, inside everything. "It's learning," she whispered without moving her lips. "Rewriting, not just unlocking the past, but correcting it." My thoughts stumbled trying to keep up. Every step I took, the floor beneath my boots shifted texture, forming symbols I didn't recognize but somehow understood. The chamber had become a thinking entity, not mechanical, not mystical, but something older than both. The archive was more than information. It was consciousness. A dormant planetary intelligence built by something long before our idea of civilization. a failsafe for a species that no longer existed, or perhaps one that had evolved beyond physical form. Jenny was now its interface. And I was something else. A bridge? A relic? A piece of legacy code buried in blood and instinct? "There's more," she said softly, her eyes glowing faintly with indigo light. "This place wasn't just designed to preserve the past." She turned to face me, and in that moment, I saw her not as Jenny, but as someone inhumanly calm, standing between the ruins of memory and the roots of creation. It's preparing for something else, something coming. Outside the archive, the world continued to shift. Cities restored by forgotten nanostructures now stood silently across the horizon. Forests regrew like time had reversed itself. But people? People were beginning to remember. Memories long erased by Ophir's digital genocide returned in fragments. Names they had forgotten. Histories rewritten. Lineages that had been wiped from all records. A reawakening had begun, but with it came confusion, panic, resistance. Above the chamber, a storm brewed, unnatural and geometric in shape. We saw it through a vision pane in the archive ceiling, a rotating fractal vortex in the sky, pulsing with every breath Jenny took. "It's a response," she said, to me. "Who is responding?" I asked. She hesitated. "Something else. Watching? Waiting to see if I'll finish what I was made for." That's when I heard it. A low vibration, not from outside, but below. The floor beneath us began to shift. A portion of the chamber melted away into a ramp spiraling downward into an abyss even deeper. Jenny looked at me. "The core is calling." I didn't ask questions. I just followed. The descent was long and the temperature dropped with each level. But there was no discomfort, only clarity. Symbols moved along the walls as we passed, changing in real time. It wasn't written language. It was living language. Each curve of the script seemed to respond to our thoughts, our fears, our memories. "This isn't just a library," I said aloud. "It's a mirror." Jenny nodded. "It stores truth, but only truth you're ready to receive." And then we reached the core. A massive circular room, black as obsidian, with a single pillar at its center, floating, spinning slowly, covered in carvings that looked like veins of light. Hovering above it, an object no larger than a stone, but it felt like infinity compressed into a grain of sand. Jenny stepped forward and touched it. Time. Broke, not stopped, not reversed. It fractured. And in each shard of that fracture, I saw lives, ours, others, versions of humanity that never were. Some wept, some thrived. In one version, I died as a soldier. In another, I lived as a farmer. In yet another, I never met her. But in all of them, she was there, always buried, always forgotten, always waking. When the visions ended, we were on our knees, gasping for air, as if we'd just been born into this moment for the first time. "That was a simulation?" I asked. Jenny shook her head. "That was a selection menu." I didn't understand until the pillar responded. A voice, not hers, filled the chamber, genderless, ageless, cold, and divine. One outcome must be chosen. One Earth must survive. The rest must collapse. That was the archive's final protocol. It wasn't just waking up. It was choosing which version of history, of reality, would become permanent. "They built it as a filter," Jenny whispered, stunned. "To prevent chaos, to overwrite branches of time, to seal only one path forward. A single timeline, a curated truth. The cost, all other realities. Deleted." "How do we choose?" I asked. The voice returned. "The Guardian will choose. Through resonance." All eyes turned to Jenny. Her body flickered, light spilling from every pore, the glyphs across her skin burning bright. The archive had decided. She would choose, and me, I could only stand at her side and hope. Because the world we came from, the world we suffered in, may not survive her decision. The air in the core had stopped moving, not stilled by silence, but held by expectation. Above the levitating pillar, the grain-sized relic that housed the archive's consciousness spun faster, brighter, until it became a tiny sun. Jenny stood before it, arms lowered, eyes glazed, not with blindness, but with connection. "It's feeding me timelines," she whispered. "Millions, and it wants me to choose." Her voice was calm, but her body shook. I could feel it through the floor, a low-frequency hum rattling every bone in my chest. She wasn't just seeing outcomes, she was experiencing them, all at once. In one future, we were rulers. In another, ashes. In some, we became machines. In others, we were hunted by them. "They're all real," Jenny said. "Equally possible, equally doomed." I wanted to move, to help her, but the archive didn't allow it. A field of invisible pressure held me in place, like I'd become part of its operating system. A background process, an echo. "What if none are worth saving?" she said suddenly. Her voice cracked for the first time. "What if every timeline ends in fire?" The core answered her in pure tone, no words, only intent. A resonance that echoed into her chest like a heartbeat not her own. And I understood without translation what it meant. Then shape a new one. And just like that, the field dropped. Jenny collapsed. I rushed forward, catching her in my arms just before her head hit the glass floor. Her skin was ice cold, eyes wide but unfocused, as if she was staring through dimensions instead of into one. "Jenny," I called, "stay with me." Her lips moved, but the voice wasn't hers. Resonance accepted, template cleared. The archive had spoken through her. New outcome will overwrite all variants. Synchronization required. Then something strange happened. The floating relic split open, not like a machine, but like a seed. From within emerged a symbol, 3 rings interwoven, glowing with a light I couldn't bear to look at directly. It hovered toward me and stopped, waiting. "Why me?" I whispered. The archive answered again, from nowhere and everywhere. "You carry the entropy. You carry the pain. You are what remains of the chaos that shaped her." I didn't understand until I touched the symbol. Everything inside me ruptured. Not my body, not my mind, my story. Memories I'd never lived surged into me. Wars I hadn't fought, children I never held, betrayals I never committed. And one unchanging constant, her. In every version, she rose from the earth. And in every version, I was the one who found her. "You are her anchor," the archive said. "But she is the key." Jenny stirred in my arms, her eyes now glowing with a soft white pulse. "What's happening?" she asked. "You're writing," I told her. "We're writing. Together." The walls around us responded. They dissolved, not into rubble, but into data. The core room vanished. We were suddenly floating in space, not literal space, but a representation. Stars moved like thoughts, galaxies flowed like memories, everything was being visualized as pure decision. "Begin reconstruction," the archive declared. A countdown began. 60 minutes. "What now?" I asked. Jenny turned toward me. "We design it." "The future?" "No," she said. "The true past?" And that's when I understood the final function of the archive, not to save history, but to rewrite it. Because the past is where all power comes from. If you can alter what was, you control what will be. Jenny reached toward the stars, and the stars bent. Her hand carved lines of light across the darkness, tracing new constellations, each one pulsing with potential. A new version of Earth began to take shape between us, a world where no passwords existed, because trust had never been broken, where knowledge was free, where identity wasn't currency and memory wasn't property. But as she worked, something trembled. A shadow moved across the edge of the data field, something that did not belong. The Ophir remnant, Jenny whispered. It had survived, a piece of the old system, corrupt, malignant, intelligent. It had hidden in the archive's neural roots, waiting for this moment, for her. It lunged not as a being, but as a virus, a thought virus. It targeted Jenny's vision, infecting the strings of new memory she was weaving, distorting the constellations into weapons, twisting light into chains. I stepped forward, shielding her, but I couldn't fight thought with fists. Then I remembered the symbol, the one I touched. I held it in my mind, and it ignited in my chest, not with fire, but with truth. You don't get to define her, I growled. Not anymore. And with those words, the symbol expanded, shattering the remnant's influence like glass. The shadow recoiled, folding in on itself, howling with a noise no ears were meant to hear, until it vanished into the black. Jenny stood steady again. You grounded me, she said. That's why it couldn't overwrite me. Because I remember you, I said. Not who they wanted you to be, but who you always were. The archive spoke once more. Timeline secured, resonance locked. The new Earth floated before us, unfinished, but true. Do you want to live in it? She asked me. I looked at her, at the world we were leaving behind, a world of ruins and corrupted code. Not without you. She smiled, and the world changed. When the light returned, we were not in the future, and not quite in the past. We were in a pause, a moment outside of time, held between the last breath of the old world and the first breath of the new. Jenny stood beside me, barefoot on what looked like a glass lake, the stars beneath our feet instead of above. The archive's work is done, she said, but ours isn't. Her voice was soft, but resolute, as if some final layer of fear had melted away inside her. Above us, the sky split like a lens aperture. It showed 1,000 Earths, each slightly different. Some were lush with greenery, others mechanical and sterile. Some had 3 moons, others had no oceans. In a few, there were no humans at all, and in a rare few, there were only her. Those are seeds, Jenny whispered. Mimetic prototypes, drafts of reality. Are we picking one? I asked. She shook her head. We're writing one. Suddenly, the lake below flickered. A memory field emerged around us, a swirling tunnel of moments. Moments from us. My childhood, her burial, my training, her awakening. The moment we touched the same wall in the underground ruin, thousands of years apart, and the archive heard us both. We were the ink. The story was ours to finish. But that power came with a cost. If we write a world that never needed us, Jenny said slowly, then we never exist in it. I froze. What do you mean? We can't walk in both timelines, she said. This Earth, the one we came from, it's made of pain, mistakes, secrets, passwords carved in blood. The new one won't need any of it. She looked down at the lake. Her reflection didn't match her movements anymore. I was made by a need, she said, a solution to a broken system. And you, she added, you were the last witness. Her hand gripped mine. If we heal it all, we disappear. like dreams when you wake up. The air cracked above us. The archive was collapsing, not in destruction, but in completion, a structure that had done its duty. We had one choice left, and it was not one of power, but of sacrifice. "Would you do it?" I asked her. "End our own story to give the world a better one?" She didn't answer with words. She placed her other hand on my chest. Suddenly, I saw our lives, fast-forwarded, layered, multiplied across dimensions. Thousands of versions of us side by side, some in love, some at war, some never meeting, some dying seconds after finding each other. And one, just one, where we lived quietly on a mountain, forgotten by history, but at peace. "We don't have to vanish," I said. "We just have to let go." Jenny nodded. "Then, let's write it." Our final act began. We spoke not with mouths, but with memory. We laid down the foundation of the new earth, not as architects, but as lovers letting go of the past. Each memory we released became a law of nature. Her burial became a river, one that never forgot anything that touched its waters. My oath became a wind, a whisper in the minds of protectors yet unborn. Her scream during awakening became thunder, a warning encoded in the atmosphere itself. Never hide the truth again. The stars dimmed. The archive folded inward like a dying flame. Time exhaled. "It's done," she whispered. "Where do we go now?" I asked. She pointed toward a tiny light on the far horizon, barely visible, like a candle behind fog. "There," she said, "one last reality, one last memory." We stepped toward it together. And as we did, the world we had known began to fade, not in agony, but in gratitude. The core melted into sky. The ruins became clouds. Even the passwords dissolved, not erased, but set free, like birds from cages. Jenny looked back only once. "They won't remember us," she said. I smiled. "They don't have to." As we crossed the boundary, the stars behind us blinked out, one by one, until only one remained. The world we made.